welcome back to Everything in Between. I'm Michael, this is Journey, and today we thought we would tell some creepy stories, a little Halloween action. We are in our costumes. I'm Rorschach from The Watchmen, and Journey is Mother Nature. She's also got a staff that she made. Um, and Journey, if you want to get us started on some stories or whatnot.
So I have some creepy stories. Full honesty, have not really read ahead. I just were on creepypasta. And then I have a cold case that I find interesting and want to share for those who don't know it. All right, so I'm going to start off with the creepypasta stories that have not read ahead. Um, and the first one is it's from Ask Reddit. Let's be real. Let's be fair here. And then user Consumptive Mary Jane. I just want to give props to these people who put their stories out. All right, so I'm just going to read it as is. When I was 7 years old, I was walking to my babysitter's house all by myself. She only lived a block from the schoolyard. I'd done it all the time. This car pulls up beside me on the road, and the driver keeps gesturing to me to come closer and shouting, "Come here, come here." I'm frozen on the sidewalk and shaking my head no while my knuckles turn white clinging to my backpack. All he says before driving off is, "Stay away from Christina." And then I never saw him again. Christina was one of my on again, off again friends in grade school, along with another girl who alternated between hating me and being buddy buddy. I had completely forgotten about it after a while and went on being on again, off again with both of them. In fifth grade, the other girl invited me to the pop machine in the back hall at lunch. Cool, okay. Quality time with a girl I've known since I was a baby. Sure. We get back to the classroom, and Christina tells me that people were playing with my lunch and hid my stuff, but she was nice enough to bring it back for me. I started drinking the pop I'd brought for lunch, and something was really off. I spit it out and ran for the water fountain to rinse my mouth out. Turns out, Christina and her sister had topped up my drink with Lysol. I drank much more. If I drank much more, I probably would have been stupidly sick. The police were called and a restraining order was put on both of them. It was delightfully ineffective, however, because the school was so small, there was no separate class to put them in. They got 3 and 4 day suspensions. I have no idea if the two events are related, who that man was, or how he knew how bad Christina was at the time, but that memory sticks with me to this day. That's weird.
Hmm,
Just imagine being told that your friend is bad, and then she tries to poison you with Lysol.
it's crazy.
Oh,
That reminds me of like I've said before that I've been clean for 11 years, but the actual last time I smoked was definitely after that. Someone put pot into my one of my tobacco cigarettes, and that was the last time I got high. So I know the feeling of getting poisoned, or not really, but
right, like something that's not supposed to be
yeah,
there. That's crazy. People are scary, man.
yeah. Honestly, it's not that it was so terrible, but I won't drink a drink that I've left in the other room for,
Yeah,
a few minutes. I've lost that trust in people.
that's a true story, folks. I've seen it. He also won't drink it because what if a bug flew in it?
Yeah, bugs too. Yeah.
Bugs and people just
People and
can't.
bugs.
Okay, next one is from user Birchwood. Again, have not read ahead. All right, this is long, but without a doubt, the most unexplainable, creepy thing that's ever happened to me. June last year, a man from Pakistan began messaging me on Facebook. Assuming it was a scam account, I ignored his attempts at conversation and thought little of it. 6 months later, the random messages started to pop up again, several times a day, with personal information about me he couldn't possibly know. Every day for almost 4 months, this stranger wrote to me knowing details about my life that I'm certain aren't on my Facebook profile. He knew where I'd worked, where I live, my phone number, the brand of smokes I buy, how I'd become unemployed, my parents separating, and my daily routine. I'm not easily spooked, but he was trying to get under my skin and it was working. I told a few close friends who were skeptical at first, figuring he'd gotten my information off Facebook, until they read the message thread for themselves and could see how serious it was. Of course, I considered the possibility an acquaintance of mine was behind the account posing as this man. Unfortunately, the timeline dated back to 2012, had hundreds of photos, check-ins with family and friends on the other side of the world, and appeared legitimate. He intimidated me for months, dropping facts about my life every now and then to scare the shit out of me. Finally, he explained he wanted to come to Australia, and if I helped him, he would pay me. At first, I was amused that he thought I could be of help, making a joke of his idea. He obviously didn't appreciate my response because he started mentioning my dad and sister. I was more angry than scared by that point and decided to contact the National Security Hotline. I figured if this individual was willing to pay a stranger on Facebook to worm his way into Australia, they'd want to find out why. They also didn't think that I was batshit that they also didn't think I was batshit crazy. So that was a huge relief after all the looks others had given me. A few days passed after the call. The messages continued, but I had peace of mind knowing I'd reported it. Maybe I had overreacted, maybe I was batshit crazy, or perhaps one of my friends was behind it all. Obviously, the authorities weren't taking the situation as lightly as I'd thought because detectives turned up at home to get the story from myself firsthand. As bizarre as the situation was, it was comforting knowing that they listened and had my best interest after being made to feel like an idiot for months. The messages stopped the same day I spoke to the detectives at my house, giving me reason to believe the action was taken when they left. I'll probably never know the details, but it's probably best that way anyway. Anyway, not the usual creepy story you read in these threads, but I won't be forgetting my encounter anytime soon.
I've had there was a time where I was playing games
Mm.
with a kid who totally sounded like he was like 13 or 14, and he was talking shit, and he was like, "Oh dude, if you don't whatever, I'm just going to hack your account. I'm going to turn off your internet." And I didn't believe him. Like, I was just like, "Dude, you're a little kid, you know what you're talking about." And he turned off my internet. And then I went, like, 5 minutes later, I got my internet back on. And I thought maybe it's a fluke, So I went back on. I'm like, still talking shit. And he did it again. And then I was like, oh shit, this guy's
Mhm.
actually doing this.
Yeah.
And then the third time, I'm like, you're a little fucking bitch. Like, I went back to talk shit again. And he
Well,
turned it off again. And then,
lesson is don't
um,
talk.
well, after that, I blocked him. And, um,
Yeah.
yeah, but like people can do that kind of shit. Like even little kids can figure that out, and it's like,
Yeah, but this is like crazy. Like he knows he had to have hacked like a webcam or something was just listening. I don't
well,
know.
yeah. I mean, a thing like that is like, I don't know if you're not weak, but like maybe more afraid or more gullible or whatever. Like these people are obviously doing this to try to get something out of you. Maybe they just don't fucking like you, but you should always contact the authorities. I just would want people to hear that story and saw that there was a resolution to that after they, because I'm sure a lot of people would maybe get scared, especially if the hacker or whatever is just like, don't fucking say anything to anybody. Always say something to people because, you know,
Al- And also because this guy wasn't just trying to scam this guy for money, he was trying to get into Australia and then potentially pay this guy for smuggling him in. But why?
I mean, maybe he just doesn't like, where he lives.
But crazy. Yeah, report things, guys. Report things. All right, next one comes from Toby the dog. Again, disclaimer, have not read ahead. Probably just my entire life would count as a disturbing, scary story. My mother and grandmother were always extremely protective over me as a child. I grew up forbidden to visit friends or family, walk down the street, go outdoors by myself, or even cook or drive. It got worse and worse as I grew older. I mean, I was 19 and my mother forbade me from having a job. She told me that I had everything that I needed right there with her. I didn't need money. I decided that enough was enough and saved up some money from doing laundry and finding change around the house, swiping what I could here and there, and I had to hide it well. She would steal it from me if she found it. She said that all money was hers and hers alone. I packed my bags one day and tried to leave. She actually tackled me to the ground and dragged me back inside with my grandmother's help. Had my phone reported stolen and took it from me so that I couldn't make calls and slept beside my bed to make sure that I didn't sneak away. She took me to to a church meeting one day, holiness, and had the demons blessed out of me for 3 hours solid. No one would help me. She had them all convinced that I was nuts and needed help. She even recruited a cousin on my next attempt weeks later when I actually got a bus ticket to come and trick me into the car. Cousin told me that she was protecting me, helping me, but she wanted to talk to me first. Shut the car door on me after I got in. I had a child safety lock on it. They drove me home and kept me isolated for a solid year before I could get help. Some of my relatives even parked their cars in the driveway for a while to keep me from leaving. Obviously not like a creepy story, but that's an insane story. Okay, to be fair, the thread is called Reddit What's Your Most Disturbing, Scary, or Creepy True Story? And I would constitute being locked up by your family disturbing.
There's a there's a thin line between um, you know,
Protecting
well,
and
just maybe tyranny or just evil. Parents can do evil things to you. They can control your life. They can control almost everything about you. The moment it gets, maybe there's some drugs involved or there's some violence, then, and you also have to balance that with, like, I love my mom, I love my dad, maybe they're abusing me, but I have to think of them and that. But, like, hopefully, if you're in one of those situations where it is violent or, there's drugs or whatever, it's just a not safe environment, you have the whatever to, contact the authorities and get yourself out of that. It's really weird if you're a little kid because, like, you don't, they're your parents and you're just, they make the rules and you think of them as your protectors and maybe this is the right way, but, sometimes it's not. And, with a gray area like controlling your money or, or just being overpowering, if it's not violent or dangerous, you're kind of just fucked. And I don't want to talk about myself, but when I went to jail, like, I remember, like, I want to say things out loud, like speak my mind, my feelings. Maybe I would want to act out or whatever, but when I went to jail, I knew I had to become like a robot and just do everything I'm told so I can get the fuck out of there. And, like, with people like that story, I'm imagining if you show an inch of resistance, like the person said he tried to run away and then now she's sleeping by his bedside, and people are like, if you're in that, you can't really let them know that that's your goal. If you find a way out,
you
take
have
it,
to
but you have to be so fucking, you can't, like, let them know that's what you're thinking. You have to, like, yeah, that's just, yeah, family stuff, especially with control, like, and you're a kid,
do it on a
it's
whim.
crazy.
But also try to make a friend somewhere outside of the family that like doesn't like try to make a friend that can help you then. Try to get help, but
Yeah, I
try
mean, if there's violence involved or drugs or whatever, then, hopefully you can just contact the authorities and get the hell out of there. But if they're
uh,
just mean, and I know just is like a whatever word, but, like, if they're just being, yeah, mean, you kind of just have to deal with it, and it sucks. But, don't show them your cards and try to get out of there. I don't.
yeah.
It's hard.
So, all right. And next one again. Have not read these. User is Zorply. Shout out Zorply. All right. I'm in my room, sitting in front of my computer, working late at night as usual. I have to go pee, so I head out the door. I'm I read that so weird. Let me start over. I'm in my room, sitting in front of my computer, working late at night as usual. I have to go pee, so I head out the door. I'm staying with family for a few weeks, so I try to be super quiet to avoid waking anyone up. To get to the bathroom, I have to go around a sort of left handed U turn. I've stayed in this house for a month or so every year for as long as I've been alive, and I've done a lot of midnight peeps, so I know the way by heart. I go out the door, take a few steps, left turn, few steps, left turn, down the hall, and into the bathroom. I turn the light on in the bathroom, do my business, turn the light off, and start making my way back towards my room. I don't want to turn on the hall light at this point, again to avoid disturbing family, so I'm basically blind. I feel my way down the hallway, right turn, few steps, right turn, and suddenly, holy fuck, I swear I saw a shadow or something move. I stop dead and listen as hard as I can, still totally blind, nothing. So I take another few steps, and I swear to God, I saw a shadowy figure move towards me, directly towards me, out of the solid wood door to my room. I stop again and feel panic start to set in. This is the creepiest thing I've ever experienced since childhood nightmares, and I used to have some pretty fucked up ones, like that my dad was trying to kill me. I'm not imagining things, I definitely saw a shadowy thing moving towards me in the dark. I feel like I might know where this is going, but I take one more step towards my room, close enough to the door to grab the handle, and the shadowy, creepy thing, as hell, shadowy, creepy as hell thing moves towards me again. It's getting bigger every time. It's right in front of my face, inches away, but I can't quite focus on it. I start to seriously freak out. I actually consider calling for help. Sleeping family be damned, and that's when my nose bumps into the mirror that hangs on the wall next to my door at a 90-degree angle to it. Turns out I'm totally disoriented and never made my second right hand turn.
So that was his reflection, the
It
shadow.
was his reflection.
Mm.
But I'm okay with it being on the list because I mean that would have been pretty creepy in the moment to not know that it's a mirror and to have like to feel that panic of someone's like there with you ready to fucking pounce.
See,
And but then you realize it's a mirror, so now you can laugh at it.
yeah, I for some reason I thought that that was like, as I was hearing it, it was like a ghost story or whatever, and I was
Hmm.
like, if you think you're seeing something, yeah, scream and wake everyone up, dude.
Don't
Like,
go towards
the
it.
fact is like, oh well, it's not that bad, but like, no,
He
it either is
probably,
or it isn't, you
my
know?
thinking is potentially he thought it was a ghost, or he thought he could get to his door before it. I don't know.
You don't want to alarm the ghost.
But, but I, I would have been fucking creeped out too. But that's pretty funny. I had a feeling it was gonna be a mirror. I had a feeling. I knew it was one. Okay, next one. Users whale pranks. All right. This story happened at my old house in Toronto. Three of us lived on the main floor of a house, and a stranger lived in the basement. We didn't know much about the guy in the basement besides he was a big gamer and smoked a lot of weed. Almost every night I could hear him below me coughing up a storm as if he were about to die. Oh, so you know he's getting hot. I would hear this quite often, and I began to realize that this wasn't really directly below my room. He appeared to be coughing in a room under our garage. Sure enough, my roommate and I went to the garage and jumped up and down and could hear the hollow room below us. Eventually, this guy decided to move out, and we were able to move our friend into the basement. It would be our first time down there, and I was excited to see this weird room under the garage. Our friend took us into the laundry room, which was under my room, where we discovered a creepy little red door that led to a cement room filled with trash and old furniture. It was basically a dungeon. This is where he smokes weed every day. It was full of mold and seemed dangerous to breathe in the air. Not the exciting room we had hoped for. Our friend didn't understand our need to see the weird room because he was pissed off at the state of the apartment. I was surprised since it appeared the other guy moved out and our friend moved right in after a day. Not much time to clean. But then my friend told me the guy had been gone for 2 weeks already and nobody cleaned it. I thought about this for a moment and immediately got a chill down my back. The last 2 weeks this guy was gone, I could still hear the horrible coughing coming from the creepy room. Dang.
Hmm.
Maybe that means like the landlord was just like living in there.
So he was hearing the coughing from like another room?
He was hearing the coughing from the room under the garage But he was hearing that coughing after the guy had moved out, supposedly.
Maybe he just stuck around.
Yeah, maybe he lied. Or maybe the landlord smoked some weed and didn't fucking clean.
That reminds me, since we're talking about scary stories or, disturbing stories,
Mm-hmm.
there was something that I experienced through the wall of my apartment or whatever. It was, I was living in an apartment complex with my mom and my sister, and there was this weird smell. And
Can you describe the smell?
so the smell, it felt like there was like sewage in the walls, or like, the upstairs neighbor had like a toilet problem or
Did your
something.
entire apartment stink?
Yeah, it smelled like
Your
poop.
entire apartment.
Yeah, it smelled like there was poop in the walls.
How long?
Um,
How long did you guys live with?
I would say like 2 or 3 days.
And then you guys called?
No, I didn't call.
Okay.
I don't think we called. I'm not really sure exactly, but 2 or 3 days later, I don't know, a whole bunch of cops showed up, and it turned out did he kill him? I think he killed himself.
I feel like you've told me he killed.
Yeah. So this guy was just dead above us for like maybe a week, but he, we were smelling him, and one of my
You're
neighbors.
lucky. I feel like you're lucky that you did not smell it like full.
No, I definitely, I now have the smell of death. That was.
No, I know, but like, you felt it like seeping through the walls. You weren't in that.
Well, yeah,
room,
that's
And it
true.
would have been.
But
So, yeah.
that smell is very distinct, and I remember my neighbor overheard the cops, and I forgot what color they said he was, but they said he was liquidy, and I just remember that detail. So, anyways, continue with your
Wow,
story.
lovely. So lovely, everybody. That is crazy, though. That would be, yeah. Okay. Okay, now we're on to. Okay, apparently these are submissions from a website called Your Ghost Stories. Alright, first one is from a user named Mickey. Okay, it's called Never Staying Home Alone Again. This story happened a few years ago, and I am sad to say that it is a little bit like The Ring 1. Never seen it. Also, again, full disclosure, I have not read the story. My house is said to be haunted. Well, at least that is what I say. And we moved here when I was 14. Since then, I always feel like I am not alone. Some nights I can see lights go on and off in my bathroom, or I smell horrible things when I awake in my house. But this encounter with a ghost was the last straw. It was a cold, rainy day, and I had to let my dogs in the house before they froze to death. My mom was at work, and my dad was at work too. They both said that they will be coming home late, so they gave me a list of what to do in order to be safe and just to keep the house in order. But the list was long, and I was not looking forward to doing all of this stuff when I could be having fun playing around with nobody home. When I was watching TV, I started to get the feeling like I wasn't alone after all. I felt a cold chill up my back and brain fart, and at the corner of my eye, I started seeing shadows. I felt a little better when I saw that my dog was not barking or showing teeth at anything. I went up to get some lemonade out of the fridge when suddenly, as I walked forward, it opened on demand. This is where it gets to be like the movie The Ring 1. So anyway, I walked around the counter in the middle to see if I could see anything in the fridge. Nothing was there, so I just walked over there and closed it. But then I felt stupid because my lemonade was in there. After I got the lemonade, I sat back down and watched more TV. As I started taking a sip, I could see in the reflection of the glass in my kitchen. I looked at the glass, trying to see the kitchen fully now, and what I saw next made me have nightmares for a long, long time. Looking at the glass, I suddenly saw this black creature run straight across the kitchen counter. I gasped, and right as I gasped, my dog jumped up and started barking like crazy, showing warning teeth. I jumped up with all feet and arms on the couch watching my dog. This is where it started getting freaky. All of a sudden, my dog starts moving his head like he's watching something dance or run. His head is moving across the ceiling and then back down to the kitchen counter again. Then my dog moved his head and stared straight at me. I screamed because I knew this ghost was either right beside me or behind me. I ran to my room upstairs and locked the door. I start crying out of fear and listening to my dog bark like crazy. Then all of a sudden, the barking stops. My bedroom is big, but my bed is right in the corner near the window in the closet. I was sitting under the covers waiting to hear my dog bark again. It was all quiet. Then I hear my dog scratching and barking even louder now at my door. There was only one meaning to this. The ghost was in my room. Next thing I know, I was woken up by my mother on the kitchen counter. She asked me what had happened, and I told her the whole story. She then asked why I was found on the counter. I told her that all I remember was passing out of my bed. She looked at me and smiled. Then she said, "It's okay now, sweetie. Everything is fine now."
Well, that sounds like one crazy dream. Maybe some sleepwalking involved.
Yeah, but ooh, I don't know if it's true, but I'd probably be just as freaked out if my dog started fucking barking like crazy, barking at something and snarling at something, and then it kept following me around. Ooh, especially at how old did it say? 14? No, yeah, I would never want to be home alone again. I'd be like, nah, take me with you. I don't care where I go. Okay, next one. There's no user on this one, but it's called Stage 28. I was about 11 years old when my dad took me to his work to see what he does for a living. He works at Universal Studios, which I always thought was a fun place to go. As we were looking at all of the stages where movies, commercials, and shows were made, he asked me something that sort of made me a little uneasy. Remember that this was back when I was 11, and I did not really have interest in spirits. He asked me if I know what a ghost is. I said yes, so he could show me whatever he was planning on showing me. He sprung up and said, "Great!" As we were riding in his golf cart, he took me to his building to get keys. He's a locksmith, so it was fun to see his office where he had keys and locks everywhere. One of his partners in his office is named Jim. He was a very nice man, and he really knew how to start up conversations. He asked me what I was going to do with my dad today. I told him that we were going to go see stages. My dad popped his head out of his little room where he does research on his computer and said we are going to stage 28. Stage 28, Jim said. Are you sure that you want to go there? I heard that it was a haunted stage. Well, if you don't know, then I will tell you what it is. Stage 28 is where they filmed The Phantom of the Opera, the old movie. Now, I forgot who played the Phantom, but he died shortly after the movie was released, and he comes to haunt that stage. Suddenly, my eyes were bugged out. I could say nothing more for my dad. I could say nothing more, for my dad said that it was time to go. I sat back down in the golf cart, staring at my dad, still bug eyed. "Aw, come on, this'll be fun," he said, trying to comfort me. But nothing helped. I was truly scared out of my mind. And right when things got a little better, we arrived at stage 28. It was locked, so I figured that when we went to try my dad's building, we got the keys to unlock it. The door slid open, and the first thing that I saw was the setting of where they shot Masquerade. Chills, it's still there, huh? It looked like it had not been touched in 20 years. That in itself, I'm gonna pause. That in itself would creep me out. To see a like an abandoned movie set that just has not been
I think
touched.
that's awesome.
No, it's cool, but like I would instantly be creeped out. I'd just be like, oh, ooh, hoo, hoo, like walking into a time capsule. All right, we walked in and turned on all of the lights. To my surprise, it seemed kind of welcoming in an odd way. My dad and I stood in the middle of the set and looked around at everything. My dad opened his mouth to say something when we heard a speaker go off in the room. It sounded like someone mumbling. I got scared a lot. I yelled at my dad saying that he did this on purpose, that he hired Jim to say that stuff about this, and he had a recording up in the booth upstairs and played it. He laughed and said that he promises he didn't. He offered to look up in the booth to see if anyone was there. To my very surprise, no one was there and it was pitch black. Suddenly, I felt this pinch on my back and I yelped. This frightened my dad because he grabbed me and carried me down. I didn't get all of the drama. I didn't get all of the drama of him carrying me down, but it felt good. As we entered the set floor again, he suggested that we leave. I'm sure I was on the same page as him because when we started walking out, I quickly looked back, and in one of the parts where people could sit down on the set, I saw a white mask floating in the blackness. This is my first encounter with a ghost, and now every once in a while I always drive up to his work to take notes on what I see. Thoughts? You think it's fake? You think that was a prank?
It sort of sounds like the father hired the exactly what the kid thought. That he hired the friend to say that, and then he played something in the stage, and he pinched his daughter or son, I'm not sure, and then he hung a mask with a string. So, I don't know. Not really a ghosty guy, you know.
I know, Michael is not a believer in ghost people. Just as a hands up, I believe in them. I don't know if that was a real ghost. I don't know if that was a prank, obviously. No idea. Could have been a prank, but imagine if it wasn't a prank. Just imagine. That's why I like ghost stories. Okay, I'll do one more and then I'll go on to the murder, the cold case I have. Okay. Last creepy story. No idea what it is, but it's called The Ghost Under the Kitchen Sink. I do not have a username for this either. And again, have not read. This story is a little bit shorter than my other stories, but I hope that it catches your attention. I was about 20 at the time, so 4 years ago from when this was written, and I was sort of used.
Used?
Yeah, no,
Used to.
I know, but the sentence isn't written right. Okay, I'm gonna try to decipher. I was sort of used to some paranormal activity going on in my big house. But there is this one thing that I couldn't quite put my finger on. Here's what happened. It was a Friday night, and I was washing my dishes in the sink. I accidentally forgot to get the sponge out, so I went to go get it under the sink. As I got it, I purposely left the door to the drawer open because I had to put it back inside real soon. As I finished my last dish, I went to put away the sponge, but the door had already closed. I thought inside my head, that's funny, I never heard it close. I thought that it was nothing after a while, and I sat down at my computer doing some research. My computer is in my room, which is upstairs, so I was looking up some research for my friend Aaron when I started hearing cupboards opening and closing. I walked down to the kitchen and nothing had been touched. The next night, I was in my room again doing research on my computer when I heard the same thing again. No one was home, and my dogs were outside. I went down again and checked up on what it was. Nothing had been touched, nothing had been moved, nothing had an abnormal look to it. This made me angry. Later that night, I heard it happen again, so I decided that I would just stay down in the kitchen so whenever something happens, I would be there to see it. I was waiting and waiting and waiting. I almost fell asleep when I heard the slamming again. I quickly jumped up and followed the sound. It came from the drawer under the sink. Out of curiosity, I opened it up and looked inside. There was this green slime that looked like it was leaking from the sink pipe. I hurried to the sink and turned it on to see what would come out. Water. I looked back under the sink again, and there was no slime anymore. I sat down and stared at it, thinking what would happen next. Suddenly, they closed, and when I tried to open them, it wouldn't budge. So this is the story of the ghost under the sink. It is not that scary, but I thought that all of you ghost lovers enjoyed it. Or I hope that all of you ghost lovers enjoyed it. Weird. What do you think? You think he's lying?
I mean, I think witness testimony is all that.
Yeah, but when something like that traumatic happens, you tend to remember things.
I just don't trust anyone, That's all.
Alright. On to. Now, this also has an extra added story for the end of this later on in life that related back. But I just wanted to say this is the Villisca Axe Murders. For any true crime fanatics out there, will probably know what this is. It takes place in, I believe, the town of Villisca, Iowa. Yes, Villisca, Iowa. It is in, it's, what is that? Southwest corner of Iowa. It takes place in 1912. Um, let's just get into it, huh? So, let's just go. I'm gonna start from the very beginning. I'm gonna start from the night before the murders. On Sunday evening, June 9th, 1912, Josiah or Joe Moore and his wife Sarah took their four children, Herman, who was 11, Catherine, who's 10, Boyd, who's 7, and 5-year-old Paul, to the Children's Day service at the Presbyterian Church. Oh, by the way, this is from iowacoldcases.org. This is where I'm reading this from. Okay. Anyways, accompanying them were Lena, who's 12, and Ina Stillinger, 8, who were neighbors who had asked their parents' permission to stay overnight with the Moore children. So there's 4 children, 2 adults, 2 neighbors. So 8 people total. The Children's Day service was an end-of-the-year Sunday school program. Sarah Moore was a Oh my god, my brain. Sarah Moore, so the mom, was a co-director, and her children performed their little speeches and recitations along with the other Sunday school members. The service ended with a social mingling that lasted until at least 9:30 p.m. When parishioners left on that cloudy, damp, and cool night, no one suspected that neither the Moores nor their overnight guests would be seen alive again. They walked the 3 blocks to their home. Cookies and milk ended the festive evening, and all went to bed. Sometime after midnight, the killer or killers picked up Joe's axe from the backyard, entered the house, and bludgeoned to death all 8 of its occupants. By 7:30 a.m. on June 10th, next morning, Mary Peckham, an elderly neighbor to the west, became concerned that the Moore house seemed quiet and deserted. She called Joe's brother Ross, a local druggist, I would assume that was a pharmacist, who arrived at about 8 a.m. to look around. His cautious inspection of the downstairs revealed 2 figures covered with a sheet in the back bedroom, and he also saw blood on the bedstead. Ross stepped back and away from the crime scene and called Joe's hardware store, telling employee Ed Selly to fetch Marshal Henry Hank Horton because something terrible had happened. Hank arrived, that's in quotes, by the way. Something terrible had happened. Hank arrived at about 8:30 a.m., went through the house, and found, as he told Ross when he came out, somebody murdered in every bed. The partially cleaned murder weapon was left leaning against the south wall of the downstairs bedroom where the visiting Stillinger girls were found. Okay, next section is bizarre murder scene. The killer had added 2 bizarre touches to the murder scene. The first was a 4-pound piece of slab bacon leaning against the wall next to the axe. The murderer also had searched dresser drawers for pieces of clothing to cover the mirrors in the house and the glass in the entry doors. On the kitchen table was a plate of uneaten food and a bowl of bloody water. All the victims were found in their beds, their heads covered with bedcloths, and all had their skulls battered 20 to 30 times with the blunt end of the axe. The ceiling in the parents' bedroom and the children's room upstairs showed gouge marks apparently made by the upswinging of the axe. So basically, he was bludgeoning them and he came up and hit the ceiling. That's like personal. That's like you're angry. Though Lena Stillinger's nightgown had been pushed up and she'd been left exposed, doctors concluded she had not been sexually abused. Lena also had a bloodstain on her knee and an alleged defensive wound on her arm. This is the 12-year-old neighbor. The Moore Stillinger funeral services were held in Villisca's Town Square on June 12, 1912. with thousands in attendance. National Guardsmen blocked the street as a hearse moved toward the firehouse where the 8 victims lay. Their caskets, not on display during the funeral, were later carried on several wagons to the Villisca Cemetery for burial. The funeral cortege was 50 carriages long. My lord. Okay, the next section. I have not read through this summary of this. The next section is called The Reverend. At 5:19 a.m. the morning following the murders, the Reverend Lynn George Jacqueline Kelly left Villisca on board the westbound number 5 train and allegedly told fellow travelers there were 8 dead souls back in Villisca, Iowa, butchered in their beds while they slept, he said, even though the bodies had not yet been discovered. Kelly had arrived in Villisca for the first time the Sunday morning of the murders and attended a Sunday school performance by the Stillinger girls before departing early Monday. He returned 2 weeks later and, posing as a detective, joined a tour of the murder house with a group of investigators. Authorities first became interested in Rev. Kelly a few weeks after the murders after being alerted by recipients of his rambling letters. Kelly, the son and grandson of English ministers, had suffered a mental breakdown as an adolescent. Since immigrating to America with his wife in 1904, Kelly had preached at Methodist churches across North Dakota, Minnesota, Kansas, and Iowa. He'd been assigned as a visiting minister to several small communities north of Villisca, where he developed a reputation for odd behavior. He'd also been convicted of sending obscene material through the mail and had spent time in a mental hospital. I want to know what obscene material, because is he taking like really bad 1912 style sexting pics and like sending them in the mail? Is he just drawing penises on paper? Or is he writing like porn and sending it to people? I'm interested. I just want to know what obscene material is being sent in 1912 through the mail. It's not funny, guys. Anyways, a grand jury indicted Kelly for Lena Stillinger's murder, and he was interrogated throughout the summer of 1917 while in jail awaiting trial. I did not know that. I will be fair. Did not know he was indicted. And it's weird that he was only indicted for Lena Stillinger's and not anyone else's. On August 31st at 7 a.m., Kelly signed a confession to the murder saying God had whispered to him to suffer the children to come unto me. Kelly recanted his confession at trial, and his case went to the jury on September 26th. The jury deadlocked 11-1 for acquittal. A second jury was immediately empaneled, but acquitted Rev. Kelly in November, so he wasn't charged. Right? Acquitted. That's what it means. No one else has ever been tried for the murders, and the crime remains one of the most horrific unsolved mass murders in American history. Okay. That's just talking about blah blah blah. Okay, so now on to the science story that I found. Did not know about this until today. But I saw it and I was like, oh, that's a good murder too.
Is it connected to this one?
Yes. Okay. Alright, so just gonna read this. This is from Esquire.com by Matt Miller and Lauren Cronk. It's from the article 10 Terrifying but True Horror Stories Reported in the News. Just for reference, give credit. Alright, the Axe Murder House, which is the Villisca Murder House, called the Villisca. It's the Axe. The Villisca Axe Murder House in Villisca, Iowa is a well-known tourist attraction for ghost hunters and horror lovers alike. The site of a gruesome, unsolved 1912 murder in which 6 children and 2 adults had their skulls completely crushed by the axe of an unknown perpetrator was purchased in 1994, restored to its 1912 condition, and converted into a tourist destination. It costs $428 a night to stay at the old haunted home, where visitors always report strange paranormal experiences, such as visions of a man with an axe roaming the halls or the faint screams of children. But in November of 2014, the haunting took a darker turn. Robert Stephen Larson Jr., 37, of Rhinelander, Wisconsin, was on a regular recreational paranormal visit with friends when true horror struck. Per Vice, his companions found him stabbed in the chest, an apparently self inflicted wound, called 911, and Larson was brought to a nearby hospital before being helicoptered to Creighton University Medical Center in Omaha. The Montgomery County Sheriff's Office said Larson suffered the self-inflicted injury at about 12:45 a.m., which is around the same time the 1912 axe murders in the house began. Larson recovered from his injuries but has never spoken publicly about what occurred that day. For Martha Lynn, the owner of the home, the incident was very upsetting. It's publicity, but that's not exactly the kind of publicity you desire to have. I don't want people thinking that when they come to the Villisca Axe Murder House, something's going to happen that's going to make them do something like that. The house remains open for tourist visits and overnight stays today. So that, ladies and gentlemen, is the Villisca Axe Murders and the follow-up story from 2014 where some guy suffered self-inflicted stab wounds. Same time as the
It
murders.
sort of sounds like he wants attention, but
By stabbing yourself?
oh yeah, people do stupid things to get attention, but
But
was
as
there?
for the actual murders?
Well, yeah, was there a reason that that guy was acquitted, or they just didn't have evidence? The only evidence they had was he confessed.
Yeah, that he confessed and like
He got a
there was rambling letters he sent people and like the probably they might have had the people that he told on the train that he said like there's 8 dead souls or whatever
hmm.
because he told people on the
I mean,
train
that sort of sounds like he's the one who did it.
but I mean yeah, he comes in one day and then he sees them and then he comes back and 2 weeks later and yeah, but that is the cool case. I think it's just so interesting how 8 people were murdered, bludgeoned to death, 20 to 30. Like that takes time. 20 to 30 blows per person. You're telling me this guy? Let's just lowball it. 20 for 8 people. That's I can't do math. 160 blows.
He had to have been a ninja as well.
Yeah, for no one to hear and to not wake anyone else up, unless he just went and killed them all one blow.
Yeah,
and then went
I would
back.
assume would do it that way.
But that makes him even more personal. You go and kill them and then go back and just bludgeon them to death.
It was probably a lot easier to get away with stuff back then. You know?
I know, but that just I can't imagine unless he did one blow per room, one blow per person per room, and then bludgeon them. That would make more sense than bludgeoning and killing everyone and then bludgeoning everyone. But to do it per room, that would make more sense. But that's you're something is up. Like you either truly hate this family, or something is going on in your brain that is fucked up. Cause and like let's highball it 30 per person. That's 240 blow. That takes time and takes dedication.
You'd think you get tired halfway through.
Yeah, and then to cover, but then, because I've heard other people talk about this case too, to cover all of the mirrors and the front entry, just the front entry glass. It just makes no sense. Could you not look at yourself?
I mean, he probably just wanted, to get attention and have his story or whatever be on the news and him to sit back in his chair and be like, yeah, I did that. People do crazy shit for attention.
But it's just, especially you in 1912, you could get away with so much because they don't have anything. They weren't even doing fingerprints then. You couldn't unless. To be fair, I guess I don't know if they were doing like just visually matching, because that's how it used to be done when people actually started taking
I
fingerprints. You would
mean,
visually
it's
match it.
obviously a lot easier now to find people.
Absolutely. But it's it's a sad 8 people, 6 children, just brutally murdered for apparently no reason. Because like, there's no way you were mad at that entire family and the 2 neighbor kids. Like, what did they ever do to you? What did all 8 of those people, 6 of those being children? Like, why not just kill the parents? Leave the kids, kill the parents. You're something's wrong. Something's meant to, and just to stage the crime scene and such that, like, to partially clean the weapon, to leave a slab of bacon, 4 pound slab of bacon. What else was there? An uneaten plate of food, a bowl of bloody water to make it look like the neighbor girl was sexually assaulted, but then she wasn't, and she had defense marks. So that little girl was the only one that we could tell that woke up and tried to defend herself. It just, it's, oh, I mean, obviously everyone probably just thinks the Reverend did it, and I think that's a solid conclusion.
It just makes me think of, like, right now, everything you could ever imagine is happening. All the
Mm.
evil things possible, and probably all the, heroic and sweet things as well.
Mhm.
Um, the world is dark and cruel, but it's also kind and loving. And um, I don't know if you had any more stories to tell or not, but
No, that's all I had for today.
I was just thinking about Halloween and um, how it's associated with darkness and evil and murder and fear, and there's a lot of negative associated with that, but we also celebrate it. It's a holiday. It's
Mhm.
a
Yeah.
So my thinking is, people dress up as monsters and superheroes and whatever their favorite whatever. And the
Mhm.
cool thing is there is a lot of darkness to Halloween and evil, and there's this evil vibe to it. But at
Mhm.
the same time, it's sort of a not heroic, but we all get to dress up as um, you know, monsters and superheroes, like I said. But it's sort of like we're um, standing up to
Mhm.
fear. People going into haunted houses, or just whatever. They get to face their fear. They get to become, um, their favorite whatever. And I like the fact that we all celebrate masking up and facing our fears. Now I don't know what the origins of Halloween is, but just the idea that
Depends on who you
that the world is a dark place, but we're all facing it together. And I know that's not really what Halloween's about. It's about dressing up cool and eating candy. But the thought of facing fears and darkness, it's just a cool thought to have. I did have a question for you, since this is our Halloween episode, and I was just curious, like,
Yeah.
if you go back in time, I wonder what your you don't have to say just one. If you have multiple, that's fine. But I wonder what your favorite, like, Halloween memory or thing you did as a kid, or whatever would be.
Okay. I'm trying to think.
It doesn't have to be a tradition. It could be like a
Yeah.
story.
Um, no, yeah, absolutely. So what comes to my head is, first and foremost, my parents used to throw a haunted house in our basement. Um, when we lived in the house I lived in for like 11 years, when I was a kid. So we also used to have a pool table. So we would put a tarp over our pool table. We would put a bunch of food out, whatever. We would invite people over. I think we even had like just neighborhood people come, like trick or treaters. But we had a whole haunted house set up in our basement. So we had it was a creepy basement. First of all, it was just completely cement. It was not a finished basement. We lived in Nebraska, so basements were normal. I know there are places where basements aren't normal, but so it wasn't finished. But we would just have a line going to the stairs, and then there would be various setups. One I remember specifically was, I remember one of my mom's friends, she was very like a petite woman. She climbed in this very tiny off the ground cabinet, and I'm talking like this tall, maybe like double doored, so maybe like this wide. But she was in there and she would like pop out. And then also we had made it look like one time that my aunt was getting surgery done. I can't remember where we got fake meat from. Maybe it was from like a butcher or whatever, but it looked like she was being operated on alive. So that was a part. And then we had my aunt and uncle got their hands on a guillotine, like a real guillotine. And so we set that up and we made it look like someone was getting beheaded. But it was a real guillotine. I swear to God. It was crazy. So that was one of my favorite things. But I do remember a time, I kind of briefly remember it. Someone peed their pants. I want to say it was my friend, but I don't want to out them because I don't remember for sure. But and they will probably never see that. I don't remember the last time I talked to them. And this one year I dressed up as Hilary Duff, probably one of my favorite costumes. I had a little plaid skirt. I was like a punk Hilary Duff. Let's be fair. I was a poor kid doing their best to be Hilary Duff. But I had a plaid skirt. I had a leather jacket. I had braids in my hair. I was looking fresh. I think that's my favorite. And then on Halloween night, eventually we just started going over to my uncle and aunt's house, and we would all trick or treat together, and then eat candy and be merry. It was cold. I will say it was cold in Nebraska for Halloween, so we pretty much always had to wear like some sort of long sleeves or pants or a jacket over our costume. So it was always hard to actually see your costume because it was always cold. You always had to have some way to not fucking cold. But my favorite. That's what comes to my brain.
I mean, mine's sort of sad now, but
Mm-hmm.
I remember one year. So my uncle, my whole life, would build a haunted house in front of his yard. So every Halloween I've ever had, I would go there. But I remember one year, I must have been like 5, and I was dressed up as a GI Joe, and the news showed up to like see his haunted house, and they interviewed all us kids, and they were like, "What are you guys supposed to be?" And we all said what we were, and and they were like, they asked me, and I'm like, "Oh, I'm a GI Joe," and she was like, "Oh, well, what do GI Joes do?" And I was like, and I pulled out my knife, and I was like, "They kill people," and I'm just this little kid. And I remember my mom told me that she was like saying sorry, like, "Oh, I'm so sorry," and she was like, "No, that's great." Like they were like happy about that.
Homicidal children.
I think the news showed up at 2 or 3 times throughout the years.
Wow.
I remember the first time I started scaring, because like that's all I remember. I don't remember them not being a haunted house, but
Yeah.
I remember the first time I started like being in it, like a part of it. Like we were too young. Like Scotty, my brother, and Jason, they would scare people. And I don't know, maybe it was like we were too little to do it or whatever, but I just remember being told no and then just like kind of ignoring that. And I got up on top of this like car or whatever that was like parked in their driveway, and I just like pretended I was, dead or asleep, or like a dummy that they would create. And when people would get close, I would move, and
Yeah.
I got a few scares, but I was a little kid, so but
Yeah.
like that just like
Potential.
jolted me. Like that was like the best thing ever. And ever since that year, I would go into the tunnel, and there would be like little spots to pop out and scare people. And me and my cousin Austin were like, a dream team with Jason. Scotty kind of, went off and did his own thing, but me, Austin, and Jason were just like the scare masters. And I remember one year there was this guy named Manesh. He was a neighbor, and I remember he was like at the very end of the tunnel, like the end of the haunted house, And me and Austin, like towards the end of the night, we went back there, like where he was, because we kept hearing this screaming. And we're kids, and he's an adult male.
Mm.
But he has the highest pitch scream like ever, and it was just so like I can't mimic it, but it was
Yeah.
hilarious. And he would get people, like he'd come out of nowhere. And the real trick is just not to be seen, and when they get close, be loud. It's a jump scare. It's
Yeah.
but I've been hit so many times, like,
Yeah.
and
I can only imagine.
you sort of learn who to
Who's
who to
there?
target. Yeah, you see
Yeah.
like a group of people, and you don't necessarily want to go for the fucking dad.
And you don't want to go for the first person.
Yeah, you want to go for the middle,
Middle.
and hopefully, like, girls,
Yeah. Or
go for
children.
the girls. Sometimes you feel bad, like if they're
Sometimes
fucking
for children,
small.
yeah.
Usually they would have like one of my littler cousins like
Yeah.
guide the little small kids and be like, don't scare, and like
Yeah.
I don't really want to scare like little kids.
Yeah.
Like that's not fun. I want them to have fun, but
Yeah.
the teenage girls, or just girls in general, absolutely, they scream very loud, and it's a good scare. But yeah,
Yeah.
I've when some of my family members would walk in, because obviously everyone would come by and
Yeah.
check it out, I would target them.
Oh,
Like,
yeah.
I would save my biggest scream for them. And it was cool. My whole family like showed up, and we would all dress up, and my grandma was the witch who would hand out candy with my uncle, and they would have this the little game that they would play. Like, there at the beginning there was like a poker table, and there was like 4 dummies at the poker table, and he would be one of the dummies. And he would not move, which props to him, honestly, because he would not move.
Which uncle?
John, he would
Oh, okay.
not move for like all night, like 3 or 4 hours of just like still.
Oh my god.
And then grandma would play her little game, which one do you think he is? And then all he would do is this, and then he would go back to not moving at all the whole night. It was crazy.
Weird.
And but yeah, she would give people candy right there, and then they would go in, and they would go through these tunnels that there was like see-through black blankets where we could see them, but they couldn't see us, and we would jump scare and pick the right moments. A lot of the time it was mostly me, Jason, and Austin, but as kids and neighborhood kids got older, they would help too. And sometimes it was kind of annoying, like they didn't know when to scare, and they're not, that sometimes they're taking spots that, like, whatever. It was just, but for the most part, like, I don't know, I sort of was reminded of how it was for me, being a kid, watching my older brothers, or older brother, older cousin scare people, and feeling like, oh, I'm too little, this is a grown-up thing. But ultimately, like, it was the funnest thing ever, even when I was a kid, even when I wasn't that good at it. So I sort of like let go of that. Like, obviously me and Austin can scream a little louder than them, and let them have fun. And it was cool. It was just a really cool time. But yeah, I've definitely been hit a lot. And I mean, I think one of the coolest things for me, like, they would I think they would build it like maybe throughout the month, like halfway, I would say halfway through October they'd just build it, and the day after Halloween it would all be taken down like by noon. So they were like really good at building, and very quickly. Especially taking down, the fact that all that work that they put in would just come down.
And the fact that it did not fall.
Yeah, like it's just like like maybe there's more to it, but from what it looks like to me, what I've seen is just giant slabs of wood, and then like wood on top, like nailed to each other, and that's it.
Yeah.
Maybe there's another way they're holding the thing up, but it just I don't know. They were really good at that, and I don't know. I remember being there like early mornings, and sometimes helping them. Like, that's how I made my dummies, is my previous knowledge of like watching Jason stuff dummies and papers, and like the fishing wire to make everything positioned the way they want without it like being seen. It was a really cool thing where the family like was all together, all like doing the same shit. Like, I wish I would have been able to like help them build it more. I remember there was this one time where like I was at Austin's and he was like talking about the haunted house because it wasn't built yet, and they were like, he was like, because he was older by now and he was like
Yeah.
more in charge of the damn thing,
Mhm.
and you know, he was trying to figure out how to make it whatever, and I was like, oh dude, let me think, you know. And I took a piece of paper and a pencil and I did this like you know, crappy drawing of like how to potentially make it the longest it could possibly be, because a lot of the time it would be like a zigzag, you know, but I made it like, you know, perfectly straight lines, and not all, there were circles.
Yeah.
But I made it to where it was like as long as it could possibly be,
Yeah.
but also there were alternate routes where you could like sort of get lost and end up in the same spot over and over again. But it was really cool that I like this dumb little drawing that I gave to Austin. They made it happen, and that was so cool. But yeah, the scaring people was just awesome, and it's really sad that that's sort of over. For those of you who don't know, I had a podcast before this podcast with one of my friends, and I sort of talked about what happened with some of the stuff involving my family. But ultimately, you know, they were making that haunted house for 30 years, and they're not doing it anymore. It is really the only thing you need to know as far as this Halloween podcast.
Yeah. Which, to be fair, it felt like they were ready to retire it anyway.
Yeah. But I've sort of been getting into art lately, like the past, I don't know, years, making shit, making movies, making whatever. I just started getting into random stuff, and I don't know what the word is, but like the act of creating something and working really hard on it and being super proud of it, and then having other people watch it or see what it is that I've made and like give me some sort of praise. Like, you know, artists are probably, not all of them, but like, you know, I'm not necessarily I've sort of lost my train of thought, but like the idea of like being appreciated for your work, I don't know, it's just a really good feeling. Besides all that, the point to anything that I'm saying as far as Halloween is I've took some of the shit that I've learned over the years going to those haunted houses, and I'm now like decorating my mom's house, which is you know, the only reason I'm not doing it here is because we live in a triplex with a gate or whatever. But you know, my mom lives in a pretty big house, and you know, the front yard's massive, and I have a big canvas there, and I hope that I hope that you know, I can grow it, and throughout the years it will potentially be bigger. Obviously I need to find my own place to do that, but I hope to continue that legacy, because whether we're fighting or not, that shit was great and amazing, and it should be continued, absolutely. I mean, I very much imagine if the whole separation or like the bridge is not there or whatever I'm trying to say, I fully imagine a future where my cousin, who I'm not speaking with at the moment, it's a little hard to breathe in that mess, but I fully imagine my cousin Austin, who sadly we're not communicating with right now, and me have our own personal haunted houses. I have a very good feeling if I start that up, you know, he may even beat me to that, but that we would compete, and you know, I wish that we could work together. Like, I definitely miss them. I wish that this sort of shit wasn't happening. But you know, go big or go home, Austin. So eventually I'm gonna build a castle, and you better watch out, kid. I don't know if you got some stuff.
I just wanted to end with some trivia, some origins of Halloween for those who don't know. I am reading this from history.com, so the History Channel. Halloween's origins date back to the ancient Celtic festival of Samhain. The Celts, who lived 2,000 years ago, mostly in the area that is now Ireland, the UK, and northern France, celebrated their new year on November the 1st. This day marked the end of summer and the harvest and the beginning of the dark, cold winter, a time of year that was often associated with human death. Celts believed that on the night before the new year, the boundary between the worlds of the living and the dead became blurred. On the night of October 31st, they celebrated Samhain, when it was believed that the ghosts of the dead returned to Earth. In addition to causing trouble and damaging crops, Celts thought that the presence of the otherworldly spirits made it easier for the Druids, or Celtic priests, to make predictions about the future. For a people entirely dependent on the volatile natural world, these prophecies were an important source of comfort during the long, dark winter. To commemorate the event, Druids built huge sacred bonfires where the people gathered to burn crops and animals as sacrifices to the Celtic deity. During the celebration, the Celts wore costumes, typically consisting of animal heads and skins, and attempted to tell each other's fortunes. When the celebration was over, they relit their hearth fires, which they had extinguished earlier that evening from the sacred bonfire, to help protect them during the coming winter. By 43, oh wait, did you know 1/4 of all candy sold annually in the US is purchased for Halloween? Anyway, there's a little bit more. By 43 AD, the Roman Empire had conquered the majority of Celtic territory. In the course of the 400 years that they ruled the Celtic lands, two festivals of Roman origin were combined with the traditional Celtic celebration of Samhain. The first was Feralia, a day in late October when I don't know if I pronounced that right, when the Romans traditionally commemorated the passing of the dead. The second was a day to honor Pomona, Pomona, the Roman goddess of fruit and trees. The symbol of Pomona is the apple. And the incorporation of this celebration into Samhain probably explains the tradition of bobbing for apples that is practiced today on Halloween. There's a lot more history, but I'm going to stop there. It originates from
I
Samhain.
mean, that does sound pretty magical. Sacrificing animals, and there's a little bit of darkness there, too. No, I mean, magical and darkness, sacrifice, and costumes.
Well, also druids, Celtic priests making predictions. And
Magic. Magic, bitch.
well, Celtics, pagans.
Totally separate from anything
Yeah.
that we're talking about right now.
Sure.
You know when you go into a pool and you're wearing goggles?
Yeah.
And then you swim for a while and then you take off the goggles and now you can see like a fucking god?
No.
Well, you just see better?
Sure.
Like it's not foggy. That's how it sort of feels. I feel like I can see so good right now because I took off that mask.
All right. Well, that's all I have. Figured I'd end on some trivia there. And I gotta go to bed soon, anyways.
True story, true facts.
work. What?
Yeah, I really, I guess I just, Halloween has always been very near and dear to my heart. It's always been my favorite holiday.
Yeah.
You know, more, it was sort of like obviously Christmas, everyone gets together and we give each other gifts, whatever, but like Halloween for me was like teamwork with my family. Like it was just awesome, and it's really sad that it's not happening anymore, and I'm gonna miss it.
Yeah.
And you know, if for some chance anyone from the other side hears this, you know, I would never want to replace or whatever. Like if it was up to me, we would all just be doing it together forever again. And maybe one day we will. But for now, I fully plan to continue that sort of vibe.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I love Halloween. I love you guys, and I love everybody, especially if you're fucking listening to this. Spooky good times.
Spooky, scary skeletons. Yeah. Thank you guys so much. Love Halloween. A wonderful time of the year.
It's the most wonderful time of the year.
Yeah, exactly. Especially if you're out in the Midwest or East where it's really fall, not here in the desert where it's not
Hey, at
actually
least we
fall
don't
and
have
it's
to
still
cover up
90
our
degrees.
costumes. We get
90
to wear
90
bunny,
degrees?
skimpy bunny costumes. So
You get to wear Skimpy Bunny
if I
too?
want,
Yeah, but you guys don't have the fall colors.
to be honest, I never like there would be costume parties,
Yeah.
and I would wear like a cool costume there. But Halloween, I would just show up in all black and wear a mask
Yeah.
just to scare people. So
Yeah. Yeah, eventually I don't even remember what I did later in life. Probably just hung out with friends or whatever.
the cool thing about now,
Or just stayed home.
about what will happen on this Halloween,
Mm-hmm.
is that we have a Ring camera.
Yeah.
And I'll be able to get footage of like scares, like kids
Mhm.
crying and stuff like that. So that'll be fun.
Oh, kids crying.
Well,
Yeah, all
the
you're gonna be scaring is
the
children.
big kids,
Yeah, but all you're
okay.
gonna be scaring are children. Big kids don't go trick or treating.
We'll see. I mean, we had the funny story last year. We had, I don't know if it was last year or the year before.
I think it was last year.
I don't know. I think it was the year
It was
before.
last year because of the pandemic. We just put the ball out.
Okay, maybe that's true. But I feel like we wouldn't be there anyway, so we put the ball out anyways.
Yeah. No.
But I don't know. Anyways, my
I don't know.
my stepdad and my mom put out
Mm-hmm.
a candy bowl outside their house, and trick-or-treaters would come and get it. But there was a girl who literally took the bowl, looked at the camera, looked back at the bowl, and then dumped it in her bag and then like ran away. So like
Yep. And the car was waiting in the. It had to have been last year because they were trick or treating in a car.
I don't know.
But I don't
But
know. But yeah, she looked at the camera, dumped it, ran back to the car.
kids, if there is that situation,
Don't take the whole.
don't take the whole bowl.
To be fair, I think it was towards the end of the night.
Yeah, I mean, I guess if it's the end, like middle of the night, but like if
If you literally see no one else out there, I guess take them all. But like, if it's like pretty early on, don't take them.
yeah, because all you're doing is like a kid's gonna come up to that bowl and there's not gonna be anything there, and that's just sad.
You're gonna break some kid's heart.
You know,
Don't do it. Be a nice person.
yeah, go buy your
Be
own
good.
fucking
Be
candy.
good. Good people. Okay, on that note, be good fucking people. Don't be assholes. This Halloween.
Have a happy Halloween.
Yeah.
And
Thanks for stopping by.
thanks for stopping by. All right, guys. Peace
Stay classy.
out.
Okay.
See you later.
Bye.